to interact and prepare the work of tomorrow. Mais sans plus attendre, Madame la Présidente.
With no further ado, Madam President, thank you for welcoming us. You have the floor.
Monsieur le ministre de l'Équipement et de l'Eau, Nizar Baraka, Monsieur le ministre des Ressources maritimes libyennes, Monsieur Adel Mohamed Sultan, Monsieur le Secrétaire perpétuel de l'Académie du Royaume du Maroc, Monsieur le Président du Forum mondial de la mer, Co-Président du Groupe de Stratégie Afrique-Europe sur la gouvernance des océans, Monsieur le Wali de Sa Majesté sur la région de Tanger, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, je vous dis bienvenue au Blue Africa Summit. Il y a bon nombre d'entre vous que je connais déjà puisque j'ai eu le plaisir de vous accueillir lors de la 6e édition du Forum mondial de la mer qui s'est tenu au mois de septembre de cette année à Bizerte, la pointe la plus septentrionale de l'Afrique. De Bizerte à Tanger, vous me direz, il faut compter que quelques brasses, n'est-ce pas ? Qui nous permettent d'ailleurs de nous retrouver, et je suis heureuse aujourd'hui de compter parmi nous de nouvelles personnalités à la première du Blue Africa Summit qui se tient à Tanger à l'initiative du secrétaire perpétuel de l'Académie du Royaume du Maroc avec le concours de M. Pascal Lamy et celui de la saison bleue. Tanger, Tanger la Blanche, ville désignée comme la perle de la Méditerranée, grande cité maritime la plus à l'est de l'Afrique du Nord, où convergent Mare Nostrum et l'Atlantique. Leader politique de plus de 30 pays, élu de grandes villes et régions littorales africaines, responsable économique, scientifique, usager de la mer et acteur de la société civile, dialogueront 2 jours durant en format stratégique pour établir ensemble une première carte des enjeux majeurs de l'Afrique maritime d'ici 2030. Sa Majesté le roi Mohamed VI a réaffirmé le 6 novembre dans son discours sur la marche verte l'ambition maritime marocaine. Son souhait est que la façade atlantique devienne un haut lieu de communion humaine, un pôle d'intégration économique, un foyer de rayonnement continental et international. Il nous invite ainsi à réfléchir à la constitution d'une flotte nationale de marine marchande, forte et compétitive, de même qu'il s'est fixé comme objectif d'assurer une connexion fluide entre les différentes composantes du littoral et le désenclavement du Sahel. L'Afrique se révèle aujourd'hui comme une grande puissance océanique, après s'être longtemps pensée comme continentale, loin des grands enjeux maritimes. Un continent-île, en vérité, fort de 37 États côtiers dans 4 archipels riches de ses 30 000 km² de littoral, de ses 3 bassins méditerranéens, Atlantique et Indien, à 10 jours au grand maximum par voie maritime de l'Europe, des Amériques ou de l'Asie. Cette découverte de son océanité, l'Afrique la vit pleinement désormais. Cependant, la mer africaine, sous la pression anthropique et celle des effets dramatiques du changement climatique, est en réel danger. Littoralisation et urbanisation massive, érosion et élévation du niveau des eaux, salinisation des sols, pollution plastique et industrielle, pillage et rarification de la ressource halieutique, perte de biodiversité, autant de menaces auxquelles il faudra savoir répondre à l'échelle du continent. Alors que les enjeux de gouvernance mondiale des océans, ceux de l'utilisation et de la répartition des ressources marines, ainsi que la question de la sécurité alimentaire sont placés en haut de l'agenda des négociations internationales, le continent africain doit pouvoir faire entendre plus fortement sa voix. Le Blue Africa Summit, et ce dès sa première édition, se fixe donc un triple objectif de mobilisation. Premièrement, engager les autorités nationales et locales du continent à développer des actions innovantes, transformatrices pour leur littoral, y compris à travers des projets de coopération régionale. Deuxièmement, construire avec les entrepreneurs africains des modèles économiques et financiers durables. Et enfin, encourager les initiatives croisant l'expertise scientifique, l'engagement citoyen et le développement aux fins de la protection de l'océan. Autant d'enjeux dont l'importance ne fera que croître dans la décennie à venir et qui justifient que l'Afrique se dote de son propre rendez-vous, nécessairement récurrent, pour penser et prévoir dans le cadre d'une économie bleue durable et d'un espace pacifié la mer africaine de demain. Je vous remercie pour votre écoute. J'invite maintenant à prendre place à côté de moi Monsieur le ministre Nizar Baraka, Monsieur le secrétaire perpétuel de l'Académie du Royaume du Maroc, Monsieur le ministre
Mr. Minister
des ressources marines de la Libye,
of Marine Resources of
Adel
Libya,
Sultan,
Adel Sultan,
et Monsieur Pascal Lamy,
and
le
Mr. Pascal
président
Lamy,
du
the
Forum
President
mondial
of the
de
Global
la
Forum
mer.
of the Sea.
Le film, s'il vous plaît.
The film, please.
J'invite maintenant Monsieur le
Let me invite now Mr. Minister, Mr. Nizar Baraka, to take the floor. We will be listening to his speech in this first edition of the Blue Africa Summit.
Je vais parler en arabe, donc
We'll be
pour
speaking in Arabic.
ceux qui ne comprennent pas l'arabe. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. السيد أمين سر الدائم لأكاديمية المملكة المغربية الأستاذ عبدالجليل اللهجومري، السيد رئيس المنتدى العالمي للبحر باسكال لامي، السيد رئيسة مبادرة الفصل الأزرق أستاذ ريم بن زينة، السيد وزير الثورة البحرية لجمهورية ليبيا الشقيقة، السيد والي جهة طنجة تطوان الحسيمة، السيد عامل عمالة فحص أنجرة، السادة الوزراء. كغيرها من السواحل العالمية ضغطا كبيرا نتيجة العوامل البشرية وآثار التغيرات المناخية، هي بذلك تواجه عدة تحديات كبرى، نذكر منها تآكل السواحل وارتفاع منسوب المياه مع التغيرات المناخية وملوحة التربة والتلوث البلاستيكي والصناعي وندرة المواد السمكية وتراجع التنوع البيولوجي، مما يستدعي تضافر كل جهود من أجل الحفاظ على النظم البيئية البحرية التي لا تعترف بالحدود وتعتبر إرثا إنسانيا مشتركا ومسؤولية على عاتق الجميع. حضرات السيدات والسادة، يلتزم المغرب على المستويين الدولي والإقليمي بالعديد من الاتفاقيات والإجراءات التي تهم مجال حماية البيئة البحرية وتعزيز الاستخدام المستدام للمحيطات وفهم النظم البحرية لدعم التنمية المستدامة، حيث ينخرط بشكل تلقائي في السياسات الاستراتيجية المعمول بها في هذا المجال. وقد تم مؤخرا تطبيق العديد من المبادرات والإجراءات، نذكر منها المبادرة المتوسطية لتطوير الاقتصاد الأزرق ويستميد، والتي تشكل منصة للحوار والتعاون بين المنطقات 5+5، والتي توجت بتصريح مالطا لتطوير الاقتصاد الأزرق المستدام. تنفيذ مبادرات الحزام الأزرق وإنشاء مناطق بحرية محمية وتخطيط الفضاء البحري، عقد الأمم المتحدة لعلوم المحيطات في خدمة التنمية المستدامة 2021-2030 وتعزيز التعاون العلمي. استراتيجية المنظمة البحرية الدولية للحد من انبعاثات الغازات الدفيئة. إعلان قمة المحيط الواحد One Ocean Summit بشأن الالتزام المشترك من جانب الجهات الفاعلة في الموانئ لتقليل الآثار البيئي لإرساء السفن بالموانئ. زيادة على مخطط عمل البحر المتوسط النموذجي لجعل البحر المتوسط بحر مثالي بحلول سنة 2030. ثم استراتيجية المتوسطة لإدارة مياه صابورة السفن ومخطط عملها للفترة 2022-2031. حضرات السيدات والسادة، تنعقد هذه القمة أياماً قليلة بعد الخطاب الملكي السامي لصاحب الجلالة الملك محمد السادس نصره الله وأيده بمناسبة الذكرى 48 للمسيرة الخضراء، والذي أكد من خلاله جلالته على التوجه الاستراتيجي التي انخرطت فيه المملكة المغربية لتأهيل المجال الساحلي والنهوض بالاقتصاد الأزرق، مع إعطاء أهمية كبيرة للبعد الإفريقي من خلال المبادرات المتميزة التي أشار إليها جلالته في إطار التكامل الاقتصادي بين الدول الإفريقية، مع إعطاء أهمية خاصة للواجهة الأطلسية، وكذلك تمكين الدول الساحل من الاستفادة منها. ركزت اهتماما على الواجهة المتوسطية التي تظل على المجال البحري شبه مغلق، يعرف حتما إكراهات وتحديات كبيرة، والواقع وكذلك أمريكا الجنوبية وكذلك دول الكاريب في شراكة للتعاون الأطلسي الاستراتيجي من أجل الحفاظ على البيئة وتطوير العلوم والتكنولوجيا في البلدان الأطلسية. حضرات السيدات والسادة، بالإضافة إلى انخراطه في المبادرات الإقليمية والدولية، يتوفر المغرب على رؤية متناغمة تدمج أسس الاقتصاد الأزرق في مختلف السياسات الاستراتيجية الوطنية، تتلائم مع الخصوصيات الجوية وترتكز على القطاعات الرئيسية كالصيد البحري والسياحة الساحلية والنقل البحري والموانئ، مع تطوير قطاعات واعدة توفر إمكانيات لنمو قوية كتربية الأحياء المائية والسياحة الساحلية الصديقة للبيئة إلى آخره. ومن المؤكد أن هذه الرؤية فهي تتطلب حكامة جيدة، وفي هذا الإطار تم إحداث منذ فبراير 2023 لجنة بين وزارية يترأسها السيد رئيس الحكومة لتنمية الاقتصاد الأزرق المستدام، أنيطت لها مهمة ضمان تنسيق المشاريع والبرامج الوطنية واتخاذ القرارات الكبرى متعلقة بتنمية الاقتصاد الأزرق. ومن هذا المنطلق يشكل كذلك البحث العلمي والتدريب والابتكار والرقمنة من العوامل المهمة في دعم ونجاح هذه الاستراتيجية، إلى جانب نقل وتطوير التكنولوجيات الحديثة ذات الصلة بالاقتصاد الأزرق. وفي هذا الإطار يمكن كذلك التذكير بأن المغرب فهو يتوفر على شريط ساحلي على 43 ميناء، منها 14 ميناء تجاريا متعدد الاختصاصات و22 ميناء للصيد البحري، وكذا 7 موانئ خاصة بالترفيه. وقد أصبح للموانئ المغربية دور طلائعي في تنمية الاقتصاد الوطني وتطوير نسيجها السوسيو اقتصادي. وبفضل البنية التحتية المهمة لهذه الموانئ استطاع المغرب التوفر على طاقة استيعابية إجمالية للموانئ بلغت حوالي 300 مليون طن سنويا، ومن المنتظر أن يرتفع إلى 400 طن في أفق سنة 2030، بما فيها أزيد من 15 مليون حاوية من فئة 20 قدم كطاقة استيعابية للحاويات. وفي هذا الإطار يمكن ذكر أننا بصدد فتح ميناء الناظور غرب المتوسط الذي يشكل مركبا صناعيا ولوجستيكيا جديدا منفتحا على الواجهة المتوسطية. هناك الميناء الكبير الداخل الأطلسي على الواجهة الأطلسية في الصحراء المغربية، والذي يعد من ضمن المشاريع البنيات التحتية التي ستلعب دورا هاما في دعم المبادرات بين أوروبا والمغرب وإفريقيا جنوب الصحراء وأمريكا، وتعزيز الروابط الاقتصادية والتجارية بين المغرب وعمقه الإفريقي. وهذا الميناء فهو سيلعب دورا كذلك في إطار تصدير الطاقات المتجددة، وخصوصا ما هو مرتبط بالهيدروجين الأخضر. بالإضافة إلى تطوير البنيات التحتية والمينائية، تم إطلاق كذلك عدة مبادرات فعلية لتمكين الموانئ المغربية من مواكبة الانتقال الطاقي والبيئي والرقمي. وفي هذا الإطار لنا استراتيجية من أجل جعل هذه الموانئ فهي موانئ خضراء، لا بالنسبة للنجاعة المائية ولا بالنسبة للنجاعة الطاقية ولا بالنسبة للخدمات المقدمة بالنسبة للسفن. زيادة على هذا الأمر فهنالك كذلك ما هو مرتبط بالسواحل، وفي هذا الإطار فهنالك قانون خاص للحفاظ على السواحل وضمان التنمية المستدامة في هذا الإطار، واستراتيجية وطنية للتنمية المستدامة. وتم كذلك نقوم بإعداد خرائط هشاشة السواحل فيما يتعلق بالأخطار الطبيعية في هذا المجال. حضرات السيدات والسادة، إنني على يقين بأن النقاش البناء خلال هذا المؤتمر سينبثق عنه مخرجات ومقترحات وتوصيات مهمة سيكون لها بلا شك انعكاسات إيجابية على التنمية المستدامة والاقتصاد الأزرق بالقارة الإفريقية، وذلك على غرار إعلان بنزرت الذي توجت بالنسخة الخامسة للمنتدى العامل للبحر، والذي حدد خارطة الطريق لتعزيز الحلول المبتكرة والمساهمة في مواجهة التحديات المرتبطة بالمحيطات على الصعيد العالمي في أفق سنة 2050. نرحب بكم مرة أخرى ونتمنى لكم نجاحا كبيرا في هذا المؤتمر وإقامة طيبة في طنجة لؤلؤة المضيق، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Mr. Abdel Sultan, Republic of Libya, Ministry of Fisheries for the Republic of Libya.
السيدات والسادة، تحية طيبة للجميع. أود في البداية أن أقدم الشكر والامتنان إلى المملكة المغربية ملكاً وشعباً على الاستضافة لهذه القمة في دورتها الأولى، قمة أفريقيا الزرقاء، والتي تحظى بالرعاية السامية لصاحب الجلالة سمو الملك محمد السادس. نشكر أيضاً القائمين على تنظيم هذه القمة بمدينة طنجة الجميلة وعلى حفاوة الترحيب وحسن الضيافة. كما نشكر السيد عبدالجليل الحنجمي الأمين الدائم لأكاديمية المملكة المغربية، والسيد باسكال لامي رئيس منتدى البحر العالمي، الرئيس المشارك لمؤسسة أوروبا أفريقيا، والسيدة ريم بن زلة رئيسة الموسم الأزرق. السادة المحترمون، نجتمع اليوم جميعاً نحمل تطلعات قارة أفريقيا في تحقيق النجاح في تحقيق وإنجاح برنامج التنمية المستدامة، ومن خلال ما يتم الاتفاق عليه من إجراءات مشان تحقيق الأمن الغذائي والاستقرار والمحافظة على البيئة. وفي ذات نحدد الاستراتيجية للوقوف على كل التحديات التي تواجه تلك الأهداف، وأهمها التلوث البيئي بأنواعه والتغير المناخ الذي ساهم ولا زال سبب في الممارسة التي أحدث التطور الصناعي المفرط لكثير من الدول. قارة أفريقيا متميزة بالثروات الطبيعية والمتنوعة، وتحيط بها البحار والمحيطات، وتخضع لمناخ متنوع وأيضا موقع جغرافي هام. نحتاج فقط معا وفق منهج محدد يحترم الاتفاقيات الدولية والإقليمية، والتي منها أهم أهدافها المتحدة في حماية البحار والمحيطات وتغيير المناخ. إن بلاد ليبيا، وهي أحد الدول 38 ساحلية المحيطة على موقع بحر المتوسط، تلتزم دائما بقرارات التي تعمل بها تحقيق التنمية المستدامة المحلية، وتدعم وترسخ هذا المفهوم في جميع المشروعات. كما تعمل حكومة الوحدة الوطنية على تطوير وتفعيل القوانين المحلية لمنع ممارسة والجرائم لذات البحر كالتلوث بأنواعه والصيد الجائر، وكذلك الهجرة غير مشروعة. يثمن ما تم تنفيذه في ترسيخ مبدأ التنمية المستدامة وحماية البيئة في القارة الأفريقية الدائمة، ولكن ما زال العديد من التحديات يجب أن نقف أمامها والعمل جميعاً على إيجاد مخرجات هذه القمة. أهمها عمل خارطة طريق يتفق بشأنها حتى وقت محدد 2030، والعمل على خلالها مسار التنسيق بين الدول الأفريقية وخاصة الساحلية على تفعيل التنمية المستدامة. العمل على إيجاد آلية للتمويل المشترك للتعاون والاستثمار في الدول الأفريقية في برنامج مشترك المستدامة، في تحديد الأولويات التي تساهم في تحديد الأولويات في كل من الجهات الفاعلة وفقا استراتيجية محددة. واجب علي أن ننوه التنسيق الجيد بين أوروبا وأفريقيا وجميع المستويات، وأشيد بالمجهودات المنظمة للدول الأورو أفريقية وفي هذا المجال، والتي يعتبر حضوره بعض القمة على اهتمامه. وأخيراً نأمل لهذه القمة النجاح والتوفيق، ونشكر لكم حسن استماع عادل سلطان وزير الثروة البحرية لحكومة الوحدة الوطنية. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، حضرات السيدات والسادة، يطيب لي بداية الترحيب بالسيدات والسادة المشاركين في قمة إفريقيا الزرقاء الأولى، والتي تنظمها أكاديمية المملكة المغربية والمنتدى العالمي للبحر وجمعية الموسم الأزرق، وتحتضنها مدينة طنجة ملتقى قارتي إفريقيا وأوروبا. وما كان ممكنا اختيار مكان أفضل من هذه المدينة التي تحظى بمكانة معتبرة في تاريخ المغرب، إذ يعود تأسيسها إلى القرن الرابع قبل الميلاد، حين كانت محطة تجارية قرطاجية، وكانت أيضاً ومنذ أوائل العشرينات من القرن الماضي منطقة دولية تمتاز بحرية التبادل والتجارة. تتمتع إفريقيا جغرافياً بكونها محاطة بالعديد من البحار والمحيطات، تجعل منها ثاني أكبر قارات العالم من حيث المساحة وعدد السكان. وما اهتمام هذا الملتقى بالتحديات التي تواجهها اليوم بحار ومحيطات إفريقيا، إن على صعيد التجارة أو تطوير البنيات التحتية والأمن البحري، أو على صعيد الهجرة وحماية البيئة ودعم المبادرة الناشئة، من شأنه أن يسهم في منح الجغرافيا الاقتصادية دورا محوريا للاستفادة من المنافع المشتركة من الإنسان والطبيعة، محورا لها برؤى واضحة، معالم قابلة التحقق والإنجاز. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، حضرات السيدات والسادة، تغطي المياه أكثر من ثلثي سطح كوكبنا الأزرق. وهذا ما يجعل الكثير من الاقتصاديات الإفريقية تعتمد في صادراتها ووارداتها على طريق البحر، ولا أدل على ذلك من تضاعف حجم التجارة العالمية المنقولة بحرا لأكثر من 4 مرات في العقود ال4 الماضية. من هنا يوفر المجال البحري الإفريقي لدول القارة فرص نمو هائلة بالنسبة للبلدان الساحلية وغير الساحلية على حد سواء، لأنه ركيزة أساسية للتنمية الاقتصادية والاجتماعية، وسبيل لتوفير اقتصاد أزرق مستدام يسهم في رفع كل تحديات إفريقيا بمحيطاتها وبحارها وأحواضها ومياهها الداخلية، وتخطي التهديدات التي من شأنها إضعاف هذا المجال مثل نهب واستنزاف الموارد السمكية والجرائم البيئية والكوارث الطبيعية وتغير المناخ والتوسع الحضري الهائل أو ارتفاع منسوب المياه وتملح التربة والتلوث البلاستيكي والصناعي وفقدان التنوع البيولوجي وما إلى ذلك. لأجل هذا كله، وإن الحفاظ على موارد المحيطات واستخدامها يمر حالياً بمنعطف حرج، فقد حدثت الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة منذ عام 2008 يوم 8 يونيو يوماً عالمياً للمحيطات لتأكيد أهمية الاهتمام بها والعمل على تحقيق توازن جديد مع المحيطات للحد من استنفاد منافعها والعمل على استعادة حيويتها وتجديد معايش الكائنات فيها. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الحكيم، وهو خير القائلين: وجعلنا من الماء كل شيء حي، فلا حياة من دون ماء. وتلك حكمة إلهية للتفكر في نعم الماء ومنابعه مطرا ونهرا وبحرا، والاجتهاد دوما لإيجاد الحلول العلمية للحفاظ عليه باعتباره منارة أمل للبشرية جمعاء. من الإنصاف في القول إن المملكة المغربية تؤمن بمشروع إفريقيا الزرقاء اعتباراً لموقعها الجغرافي المنفتح على واجهتين بحريتين، المتوسط شمالاً والمحيط الأطلسي غرباً، الأمر الذي جعل البحر دوماً عاملاً مؤثراً في كل الحضارات التي تعاقبت على تاريخ المغرب منذ القدم. وهو ما فتئ مولانا صاحب الجلالة الملك محمد السادس أيده الله ونصره تأكيد في عدد من خطبه، من ذلك إعلانه حفظه الله في خطابه بمناسبة الذكرى 48 للمسيرة الخضراء المضفرة 6 نوفمبر 2023 عن مبادرة دولية طموحة بقوله أيده الله ونصره: نقترح إطلاق مبادرة على المستوى الدولي تهدف إلى تمكين دول الساحل من الولوج إلى المحيط الأطلسي، والمغرب مستعد لوضع البنيات التحتية الطرقية والمينائية والسكك الحديدية رهن إشارة هذه الدول الشقيقة، إيماناً منا بأن هذه المبادرة ستشكل تحولاً جوهرياً في اقتصادها وفي المنطقة كلها. انتهى كلام صاحب الجلالة. Mesdames, Messieurs, le terme blue accolé à cette édition sur l'Afrique maritime évoque la Blue Note, ce Graal tant recherché par les musiciens pour atteindre l'harmonie parfaite. En matière d'harmonie, permettez-moi de suggérer, les mers et les océans semblent plus vite s'accorder que les organisations humaines, car si la Méditerranée et l'Atlantique s'unissent merveilleusement malgré des zones de très grande turbulence qui rendent en effet périlleuse les navigations à leur point de contact, plus laborieuses.
Unite marvelously despite the different turbulences that may make their navigation perilous. Human interaction is even more difficult. This meeting on the theme of water can be conceived as the research of a note of convergence and harmony, and in this way that it opens multiple perspectives for our populations, for our economy, for our multimodal transports, for our cooperation, more profitable cooperation, and for collective securities and a better exploitation of fish resources. We know also that it is important that we focus on the rise of sea levels given the melting of the caps and the consequences of climate change. I would like to refer quickly to an article written by Mrs. Françoise Vergès called Oceanic Africa, Liquid Africa, entitled who says, I quote, "We read Africa as a landmass. We speak of its cities, of its forests, of its deserts and countrysides, but never of its liquid spaces, its massive rivers, its lakes, estuaries, basins, be they the Congo, Niger, the Nile, the Zambezi, of its gulfs, of its seas, and of its oceans." Africa is more often than not referred as a landmass, but these liquid spaces have played a very important role in their political, cultural, economic, and social history. They have facilitated exchange of cultures, of spirits, of gods, and who are looking over them and are often called upon. I do not hesitate to take the liberty of quoting the dazzling verses of the Nobel Prize winner for literature, the great poet Derek Walcott, which Mrs. Françoise Vergès evokes in her article. Where are your monuments, your battles, your martyrs? Where is your tribal memory? Gentlemen, in this gray safe, the sea has locked us up, has locked them up. The sea is history. There is here in this cry a call for the rewriting of the history of Africa, a call for a new historiography of Africa, which crosses land and sea, water, banks, and shores. A call to write a cultural and social maritime history that combines literature, sociology, anthropology, post-colonial studies, religious studies, and gender studies. Thus, an awareness is born that another geography of the world is emerging, that there no longer exists either periphery or center. Everything is central. François-Xavier Fauvel, professor at the Collège de France, holder of the Africa Chair, reminds us to the obvious, that if we must rethink global phenomena, we must rethink them with Africa, but also from Africa. To conclude, I express my wish that the depths of our exchanges will be proof that if the first Blue Africa Summit is ambitious, it is because it opens new avenues for rewriting world history from a rewriting of the history of Africa. It opens the most beautiful of projects, the history of the harmony of peoples and nations. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much. Honorable Perpetual Secretary of the Royal Académie of Morocco. I now call Monsieur Lamy to the floor. A round of applause, please, for Mr. Pascal Lamy, President of the World Forum of the Sea. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends.
Merci pour votre participation à ce premier Blue Africa Summit. Et je voudrais très généreusement saluer celles et ceux avec lesquels nous avons conçu cette première édition. Évidemment, d'abord, mon ami Abdeljalil Lahjomri, secrétaire perpétuel de l'Académie du Royaume du Maroc, et puis aussi Rim Benzina, qui dirige avec un formidable dynamisme la saison bleue. Nous le savons, l'eau monte. Elle monte au propre, et c'est une mauvaise nouvelle, mais elle monte aussi au figuré, et ça, c'est une bonne nouvelle. Qu'elle monte au propre, nous le savons, nous le constatons, nous savons pourquoi. Nous avons passé sur cette question 3 jours la semaine dernière à Paris, au sommet pôle et glacier.
The Paris Forum on Peace, but the news is that the water level is actually rising, and it is a huge problem for us. And it is actually increasing, and we are actually discussing this globally, and this is becoming more and more consecrated to environmental issues on climate change, on also degradation and biodiversity. And it's one of the reasons why I would like to commend the presence of some prominent issues here, prominent people here who actually represent the universal voice of the ocean. Not only the ocean, but the hydrosphere. Given that, we need to consider the entire aquatic and marine systems, be it for potable water or even salty water, to actually understand the physiology and also the dynamics of this water level rising at this quick pace. And it is on behalf of this ambition of actually getting the ocean back in check in this conversation, planetary conversation, European and national conversation, that we've come up with this Blue Africa Summit in different stages in following this trajectory. And so we leave in some part of our occupations to regards, for example, in 2020, on the conference on the ocean that will be organized by France and Costa Rica, with different stages that are really important. Last year in New York, and also with retreats in deep sea. So this we hope for last year, that we have this treaty on plastics and also pollution, and all of these that can be seen in different systems and also very close to us. The president actually spoke about this in Abidjan, in Kenya, and also in Kenya some weeks ago. And what brings us together here today, in 15 days, also in Dubai, we've tried to actually make the ocean an important point of discussion when we're talking about the environment. And this is actually anchored in Africa and also on this continent in Tangier, strongly, at Sharm el-Sheikh, and this to take place in Dubai this year. And we have this integration of the African continent in this movement that we would like to develop here together. So I would like to say that I'm delighted with regards to the commitment of the Africa-Europe Foundation in the development and governance of this first Blue Africa Summit. And I say this with a lot of warmth from the side of my co-president of the Africa-Europe Ocean Group, and also with the commitment of the institute in Brussels, which is represented by the General Secretary. I'm talking about two initiatives, Jacques Delors institution, and here we're talking about new institutions between Africa and Europe, and it's because we share a big part of this African universe with regards to the oceans that will be celebrated, and where we have the perpetual secretary of the Académie of the Kingdom of Morocco. And so I would like to conclude in saying that with regards to what we prepared, what we have tried to do, once again, give the ocean its rightful place. I hope that the discussions will take place with a lot of success, and this would actually encourage us to start again with regards to preparing this summit, the program, and also with regards to the participation. I think that we are starting on the bright note, but it is up to us to confirm this tomorrow. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Honorable Minister, Honorable Perpetual Secretary. So we would invite you to take your places back. Thank you. Congratulations. And I would like to tell you to actually follow this UN sequence with the President Ashok Adisem, who is sending us this message, especially for Morocco and the organizers of the Blue Africa Summit, to actually launch us into discussions. They're speaking to us from New York.
Je vous rassure, c'est pas le...
Don't worry, it's not the President of the UN who's singing. It comes now. Here we go. We cannot hire the speaker. We cannot hear the speaker. Can we start the message from the beginning?
Domain. Excellencies, distinguished participants, it is my distinct honor to address the inaugural Blue Africa Summit. My only regret is that I am not able to join you in person, despite my keen interest in strengthening Africa's maritime domain. Let me commend the Kingdom of Morocco's esteemed leadership in championing the vision of His Majesty King Mohammed VI to make the Africa maritime space a zone of peace, stability, and shared prosperity for all. Contriving to create, nurture, and sustain peace must be the centerpiece of our work in these times. His Majesty's vision aptly resonates with the theme I have chosen for the 78th session of the General Assembly. The maritime city of Tangier, at the confluence of the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, and spanning both Africa and Europe, is the ideal place to host this august gathering. Indeed, Africa has emerged as a significant oceanic power boasting 30,000 kilometers of coastline in 37 coastal states. Its maritime routes, which once linked ancient empires, today increasingly transport people, energy, food, and maritime resources across 3 oceans. On the continent, some 200 million people live within 50 kilometers of the coast, a figure set to double by 2030, and a reality that makes the maximization of its dynamic maritime potential vitally important to Africa's future development. This is especially true as sea level rise continues to pose an existential threat to its low-lying coastal areas. Excellencies, this summit's emphasis, therefore, on the blue economy as an integral aspect of Africa's broader regional integration agenda comes at an extremely opportune moment. The blue economy can be a strong driver of sustainable and inclusive growth and development, providing crucial livelihoods and job opportunities for many, and thus helping to boost the food security needs of millions on the continent and potentially abroad. To optimize the prospects, all potentially viable sustainable financing models should be explored based on local needs and priorities. Ocean protection and management plans stand a better chance of success when scientific expertise is integrated with citizen and stakeholder engagement. Excellencies, distinguished participants, as I close, let me remind that Africa is a cradle of human civilization and a continent of great promise for peace, human rights, prosperity, and development. Realizing that promise requires that we urgently address the obstacles hindering its progress to achieve the 2030 and 2063 agendas. I therefore encourage all stakeholders, national and local authorities, civil society, and the private sector to forge strong partnerships that address the challenges in Africa's maritime domain, and aligning these efforts with those of the African Union and other regional and international organizations. In this regard, I look forward to participating at the upcoming AU Summit to share further thought with the leaders. And I urge development partners to seize the opportunity offered by this critical Blue Africa Summit to scale up investments in the continent's sustainable development. Together, let us ensure that no country on the continent is left behind in our unrelenting quest for peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability for all. I thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. He's not listening to us, but indeed we are engaging France, Costa Rica, and the UN agencies, and there are at least 2 represented here who are going to speak after this. And before we call on stage for his keynote address Ambassador Peter Thomson, Special Envoy of the Secretary General for the Ocean, and who is so of existential importance for all of us here, your presence and all what you have done. I just want to bring to your attention the music. So not the song that we maybe will sing later on at the dinner, but the music that Reem and the team selected, which was, you have recognized it, Ainsi parlait Zarathustra of Richard Strauss, which is basically the story of man in nature, and which became 2001, l'Odyssée de l'espace. And with Peter Thomson, actually, another Odyssey, c'est l'Odyssée de l'Océan. So thank you, Peter, for all you have been doing for us, for the ocean community and for the world. The floor is yours for the keynote address. We can clap him warmly. Merci, Peter.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Ashok. With the music, I was going to give you some Fijian dancing, but I held myself back. Mr. Minister,
Monsieur le ministre, Monsieur le permanent secrétaire permanent, Vos Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, tout protocole respecté et salutations à toutes les personnes présentes ici à la première édition du Blue Africa Summit, ici dans cette belle ville côtière de Tanger. J'ai vraiment bien profité de mon trajet. Je suis passé par le Cap et la route côtière est magnifique, ainsi que la ville historique de Tanger. J'aimerais remercier l'Académie royale
and the Forum Mondial de la Mer and la Saison Bleue for giving me the honor of addressing you all today. Bounded by the Atlantic and Indian Oceans and the Red Sea and, of course, the Mediterranean Seas, the African continent has much to gain from a careful development of the sustainable blue economy and, indeed, from the faithful implementation of SDG 14, our universally agreed goal of conserving and sustainably using the resources of the ocean. At the same time, it should be said that the continent has much to lose. A continuation of the observable decline of the ocean's health. My daily mantra is that there can be no healthy planet without a healthy ocean, and that the ocean's health is currently measurably in decline. To halt that decline, the international community has been rallying in oceans defense through the enactment, first of all, of SDG 14, and of course of the enactment of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. At the UN level, it's been rallying by adopting the BBNJ High Seas Treaty in New York this year, and in Montreal in December last year in the shape of the Global Biodiversity Framework. It's been rallying at the WTO in Geneva with work to rid us of harmful fisheries subsidies, and in Nairobi through the ongoing negotiations for a treaty to control the rampant pollution of our planet by plastic. These are monumental steps in the struggle to meet the triple planetary crisis of our times, but none will have any effect until they have been robustly concluded, ratified, and implemented. Therefore, the catch cry, wherever I travel these days, is ratify and implement. On that score, we have far to go. Thus, on Ocean's behalf, I urge you all to take back to your capitals around the African continent that message of urgency on ratification and implementation. I'm advised that our aim here at the Blue Africa Summit is to identify the key challenges facing Africa's maritime domains in 2030, by 2030. So we're supposed to focus on how to mobilize political authorities, how to foster regional cooperation projects, how to promote economic models, and how to encourage ocean protection. I would respectfully suggest that all of these elements are actually captured in the range of multilateral negotiations and agreements to which I've just referred. And I'll be pleased to discuss them with you in more detail during the course of this summit. Given constraints of time, I'll restrict the remainder of my remarks to one international milestone in particular, namely the third UN Ocean Conference, to be held in Nice in the south of France in less than 20 months' time. Ladies and gentlemen, the UN Ocean Conferences are mandated by the consensus of the General Assembly of the United Nations. As such, they are universal international moments to take stock of our universally agreed aims of SDG 14. Held every 3 years, I view them as moments of truth along the course of SDG 14's course of its implementation. And given their track record to date, I believe it's fair to portray them as vectors of international consensus for improving humanity's relationship with the ocean. From the very first UN Ocean Conference held in 2017 in New York, these conferences have celebrated inclusivity and diversity as their hallmarks. They exist to support the implementation of SDG 14, as I've said. And for SDG 14 to succeed, the conferences affirm that cross-sectoral collaboration is vital through the inclusion of civil society and academia, the private sector, and the scientific community. And within those sectors, of course, it goes without saying that gender parity is a given, and that the role of qualified young people is absolutely essential. In the remainder of my remarks today, please permit me the acronym UNOC 3 when I'm referring to the third UN Ocean Conference. Co-hosted by the governments of France and Costa Rica, it will take place in Nice over 5 days from the 9th to the 13th of June 2025. During UNOC 3, the co-hosts are keen for multilateral ocean-related processes to be brought to fruition, including those acting upon plastic pollution, fisheries, and marine biodiversity conservation in waters both within and beyond national jurisdictions. The co-hosts are giving high attention to 3 critical areas of ocean action by organizing 3 special events. And these special events will be held directly prior to UNOC 3. The first special event is the One Ocean Science Congress. And it's going to be held in Nice from the 4th to the 7th of June, and will be dedicated to delivering scientific evidence for better informed science-based decision-making at UNOC 3, and thereafter at national, regional, and international levels. One of the chief organizers of that Congress was with me in China last week, Professor Jean-Pierre Gattuso. He said they're expecting thousands of the world's best scientists to be present in Nice at that Congress. The second UNOC 3, allow me, the second UNOC 3 special event will take place in Nice on the 7th of June and will focus on the resilience of coastal cities and regions in the face of sea level rise. And the distinguished speakers before me were referring to that phenomenon. This special event is motivated by forecasts that sea level rise will accelerate over coming decades, threatening the ways of life of more than 1 billion people around the world and presenting bleak prospects for a broad spectrum of coastal habitations, ecosystems, and productive agricultural lands. Earlier this month in Paris, the government of France held the One Planet Summit on the subject of the poles and glaciers, and the summit set out to increase scientific cooperation on the prevention and adaptation to the melting of the cryosphere, which is, of course, a very direct cause of rising sea levels, together with global warming. An ambitious coalition at the summit on ocean rise and resilience was launched to bring together cities and coastal regions and small island developing states threatened by submersion. Happily, we will have with us tomorrow Ambassador Poivre d'Avour, the special envoy of the President of France, who is best equipped to advise us on the outcomes of the Paris summit and its direct relevance to the UNOC 3 special event on the resilience of coastal cities and regions in the face of sea level rise. I come from the islands of Fiji, and we are already relocating villages in low-lying areas. The third special event will take place nearby Nice in the Principality of Monaco from the 7th to the 8th of June. It will focus on the funding required to protect the ocean and implement SDG 14 through the development of a truly sustainable blue economy. The Monaco Forum will convene high-level representatives of the public sector, the private sector, and civil society to increase ocean funding, including through the development of innovative financial solutions and mechanisms, and the creation of an inclusive enabling environment through policy and regulation and governance. We're privileged, as you know, because you've already heard him speak, to have with us today Pascal Lamy, the former Director General of WTO, as he is leading the charge towards the Monaco Forum. And he'll, no doubt, over the course of tonight and tomorrow, be able to elaborate more lucidly than I on what has just been described. So we're facing maritime challenges around the world that will require Herculean efforts from us. It's therefore, I would say, very auspicious that the first edition of the Blue Africa Summit is being held just a few miles away from the famous Grotto of Hercules. If you haven't been there, I recommend you do, because I've just made a visit there myself today. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will conclude my remarks here at the Blue Africa Summit with the assertion that the time is upon us to make the massive pivot towards investment in ocean science and the sustainable blue economy, all in a nature-friendly world of truly circular economies, nature-friendly circular economies. And we must make that pivot as if our grandchildren's lives depend on it. Because for many of them, as is already the case, that may well be the future. I thank you for your attention.
Here, but Ambassador, you stay with us. We'll get your gift organized there. And I'll request our guests from UNEP, from Davos and the Friends of Ocean Action, as well as Charlène Vicheva, our DG from DG Mare, to join us for the next session. We wanted to thank you very much with this little surprise, Ambassador, first because I forgot to mention, but you were the previous President of the General Assembly at the UN, and you created UNOC, and I think it was reminded to us by Pascal Lamy. So while our distinguished speakers are coming, I think we could again give a big applause to Peter Thomson for all what he has been doing for us, and to thank you for your support. May I request you to take your seat on the stage, and we'll enter into the third sequence, which is rather a Davos-like meeting. Please, so Leticia Carvalho from UNEP, who is heading many things, and most specifically the ocean. DG Mare, Charlène Vicheva from the EU. Please join us on stage. Hello, bienvenue. And Alfredo Giron, Mr. Ocean from Davos, please. And you inspired us this last sequence, and I count on you. Et Monsieur le Gouverneur.
We will also invite Mr. Governor of the district of Abidjan. Would you be kind enough to join us on the stage in order to exchange on the different dimensions that we just have mentioned? En attendant, Monsieur le Gouverneur, si tu me permets, j'aimerais
Peut-être en français.
Maybe in French, and also with your permission, Pascal Lamy, I'd like to share an equation here, a mantra and triumph. First, the mantra.
That we're going to have. the mantra that you shared with us last week at the Polar Summit. I'll remember in English: knowledge, conscious, policy, and no policy without action and transformative action. I think that's right. La connaissance, la conscience, la politique et l'action.
Knowledge, action, and policy. This is what we are targeting today in our works and tomorrow in order to come out from the Blue Africa Summit from Tangier with outcomes, with recommendations. And we are here to listen to you, to listen to your recommendations, all of you, today and tomorrow on this equation. And here I take the permission of the French Fund for Environment. And the equation is resilience comes from two things. First, governance, and then protection. Protection plus governance equal resilience.
Et puis, la troisième chose.
And the third thing from my boss, which is the ambassador of Darfur, who will join us later on, is the triangle. The triangle is what we are trying to do here for UNOC. The basis of the triangle, it's science. Put the science in the heart of the procedure. The other base of the triangle is finance, finance for the ocean and economy, blue economy. And the high tip of the triangle is governance, multilateral governance. This is what you have always aspired to do, Mr. Hassan. This is what we're working on, and this is why today we are almost, I look at all colors here and all nationalities, all flags, all languages represented. I'd say that in Africa today, we are already in this vision towards UNOC. Maybe we start.
Special message, which is also a surprise, un message du Premier Ministre de la.
Message from the Prime Minister of Côte d'Ivoire, and that Mr. Governor will read to us on the podium because it's that of the Prime Minister. And your applause. We're always happy to have such speeches. Before we start the discussions, Mr. Governor, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, in your respective grades and qualities, I would like to deliver the message of the Prime Minister of Côte d'Ivoire, former Governor of Abidjan. I'm honored to actually speak in front of this August Assembly to actually greet on behalf of His Excellency, the first Prime Minister of Côte d'Ivoire and former Governor of Abidjan. And I would like to thank you for the honor you've given him to invite him to this first edition of the Blue Africa Summit. However, he actually would like to express his regrets for not being able to be with you today, given his very tight agenda linked to his new function as Prime Minister. Nevertheless, he's still attentive to the different exchanges and missions that would actually come out of this forum in order to think of the promising perspectives to improve our marine environment. I would also like to commend the organizers of this forum for the delicate attention they paid to the Abidjan delegation with regards to the preparation of this meeting since our arrival in Tangier. Our planet, as you know, is actually going through a lot of changes over the last few decades due to climate change effects. The beaches and also the oceans are actually highly impacted. Africa is going through crisis relative to maritime crisis when it comes to coastal issues, when it comes to pirates, and also overfishing, and also other problems. These include the major problems for the researchers and also observers from Africa and also across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, Côte d'Ivoire is actually bordered by the Atlantic Ocean with about 590 kilometers of coastal land. And so it means that Côte d'Ivoire is really implied when it comes to problems with sea and the ocean. The different dynamics actually cut across several aspects which touch the economy of the country and also the populations and also the level or the quality of their lives. You should know that Côte d'Ivoire is actually facing a huge shortage of fishes in its waters, and also whilst we wait to renew our resources, the state is pushing with the help of His Excellency Alassane Ouattara, who has the same vision as the King of Morocco. And they've imposed 3 different periods of actually banning or restrictions on sea fishing, which are going to have artisanal fishing, and also the different units for industrial fishing and also semi-industrial fishing. All of these aspects are going to be impacted, and also for the next trimester, next quarter, we're going to have other sanctions. And also we believe that Côte d'Ivoire actually depends on the coastal activities that represent a huge part of the economic activities of Côte d'Ivoire. And this, thanks to this opening to the sea, the Abidjan is an opening point to commercial exchanges with other countries. Consequently, whilst associating with these events, the city of Abidjan actually opens up its maritime space against any form of degradation. And to this we've developed a plan, an action plan. With regards to the development of this action plan, we have scientific analysis of the vulnerability of the territories with regards to climate change risks. These have been carried out with the aim of carrying out the necessary actions. The results of these analyses have demonstrated that the last few decades have witnessed an intensification of the rising water level, causing flooding along the coastal cities. This, we would need to remind us that in the face of climate change, which provokes the conjunction when it comes to thermal dilatation of water and the oceans, and also melting of ice, this shows that Côte d'Ivoire has one of the highest vulnerability indices when it comes to climate change consequences. With regards to the exposure to the rising sea level, we would also like to remind us on the serious waves from last August that actually flooded houses in Grand Bassam, and we had huge losses in terms of material losses. And this, for Côte d'Ivoire, since several years, villages along the coast, like the Haute High Banda city, are completely submerged. The consequences that can be foreseen with regards to this meteorological incidents will need to be aligned to our scientific researchers' results. So, you know, having about 3 meters higher, and also the different touristic activities when it comes to hotel industry, and also human lives, and also displacement of populations, and all the disappearance of the territories that are of the low altitude, and also the destruction of the coastal ecosystem, and also the loss of marine ecosystem. So this has actually happened several times since 2015. However, we have some obstacles and some gaps that have been encountered in the implementation of adaptation measures. Aside the instability, you know, the destructive activities of man on the ecosystem, like the mangroves, actually weaken these adaptation measures along the coastal lines. And this is also linked to the high cost of infrastructure that we need to put in place. And also talking about the contributions nationally that have been reviewed in terms of costs, and also the cost of the degradation caused by human activity along the coastal lines in Côte d'Ivoire This actually is about $1.905 million per annum. According to the World Bank, that is about 992 billion 500 million CFA francs per annum. And we know that we're going to have the sea level rising by 20 centimeters in a short while, and also Abidjan in West Africa has been evaluated to have about 460 billion CFA francs. So it is the time for us all to identify efficient measures to fight against these changes that we are exposing our oceans to. So we need to establish solid partnerships to work together to find efficient solutions that can be achieved in protecting the oceans and also boosting the blue economy of our countries, but also ensure the protection of these marine spaces. Ladies and gentlemen, between now and 2030, Africa is going to witness a huge demographic growth with a population of more than 1.7 billion people. It is important, hence, to share with the future generations our lived experiences with regards to the sea and the oceans, in order to actually incite a desire, a profound desire to protect these oceans and the seas. Like it has been said, for all of the actions we need to construct, we need to build. So through this, I can tell you that to protect water, it is not an illusion, that this is a reality that we need to build together. At this forum and also during past initiatives, we have raised today the foundations of an ecological reality which is sustainable for water and nature, in order for tomorrow's generations to be able to achieve or complete this construction, and that this profound desire be in the hearts of each and every one. And I would like to renew the commitment of Abidjan to support all actions towards preserving marine life and also fighting against all forms of marine degradation, in line with the United Nations Oceans Summit conclusions. So this is a word of faith, ambition, and hope on which I would like to conclude, and whilst wishing you all the best in this forum with fruitful exchanges and enriching exchanges. I thank you. May God assist all of us. Thank you. Thank you, dear Governor Leticia Carvalho.
Freshwater from UNEP, you made all the way from Nairobi, which is Africa, although you're Brazilian. What I was saying is we are already at the UN here in Africa, and that's very wise. I don't know if you prefer carrying on here. I guess the microphones are working for your statements, like that we engage in more conversational type, because we said to Alfredo that we're organizing a Davos already in Tanger. Leticia, the floor is yours.
Happy to do in Davos style. Excellencies, colleagues, partners, and friends, I am Leticia Carvalho, head of UNEP's Ocean and Freshwater Work. I'm delighted to be with you today. As a Brazilian oceanographer, Ashwaka already introduced me. No topic is closer to my heart. But I must say that after Ambassador Peter Thomson, inspired by the song, decided to consider to do a little Fijian song, I was thinking that I could do a little samba as well for you. But I will do this next time, because this is the first of several summits here in Africa. How fortunate we are to be hosted on Tanger's shores, a jewel of biodiversity nestled in the Mediterranean's blue expanse, bringing Europe and Africa. We are here now to explore significance of this remarkable continent's adjoining ocean, bounded on the west by the Atlantic, on the north by the Mediterranean Sea, and on the east by the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, as you already mentioned at the beginning of your speech, Rami. This is not merely a vast expanse of water, but a life-giving nexus with the power to shape Africa and our world in multiple ways. Further, we must appreciate and holistically govern the journey of waters from source to sea and ridge to reef. For waters flow in a never-ending cycle, bringing life to ecosystems, species, and to our very humanity. This continent is endowed with massive aquatic and marine resources. A 2022 report estimates that the blue economy generated nearly $300 billion for Africa in 2018, creating 49 million jobs. It's obvious that putting healthy waters at the heart of the Africans' decision-making is essential so that effective protection, sustainable production, and equitable prosperity can go hand in hand to benefit people, nature, and economy. But today, no part of our blue planet is unaffected by human activity. The triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and rampant pollution and waste has an outsized impact on waters. Specific to the ocean, environmental threats include unsustainable and destructive fishing practices. A third of our fisheries are no longer sustainable. Land and ship-based sources of pollution, plastics, noise, several before me already mentioned about this. Habitat destruction, invasive species, hazardous and toxic spills, and the unknown deep sea mining. We are and we stand at many crossroads for climate, pollution, and biodiversity alike. As a snapshot, where will the urgent need for a green energy transition essential for curbing emissions and maintaining global temperatures below a 2 degrees Celsius rise take us? Where? Will we ensure that in this transition, we will not make the mistakes of the past? That we will protect nature, the ocean, its habitats, coastal, and the species while transforming to new systems? By 2050, the world's appetite for precious metals is projected to soar by 500%, reaching an astonishing 3 billion tons of graphite, lithium, copper, and cobalt. Will we look to circular economy solutions and reuse before we head to virgin territories? We will place nature at the heart of the decision-making to ensure that wind farms and transmission lines are seated in areas that need to be restored versus into pristine areas that could be damaged, out of the way of the migratory passes of Africa's great pelagics. The climate crisis should not come at the expense of further biodiversity loss or ecosystem degradation. However, despite the challenges we face, there is cause for optimism. We are witnessing unprecedented global attention and international traction on the front of sustainable governance. The world is awakening to the urgency of the situation, and Africa can and must continue to be at the forefront, leapfrogging the best development paths. There is a clear vision for the continent, Africa's blueprint for transforming into the global powerhouse of the future. Agenda 2063 recognizes the sustainable blue economy, salt and fresh, as an immense opportunity for accelerated economic growth. Integrated approaches, including marine spatial planning, integrated coastal zone management, and integrated water resource management, will be critical in turning the tide towards sustainability. In terms of global traction, I may repeat a little bit Peter Thomson here, but I must resonate him. We have the Global Biodiversity Framework with agreements to protect 30% of our land and seas and restore 30% of the ocean and inland waters by 2030, with adequate financing and the voice of indigenous peoples and local communities as its foundation. Earlier this year, the International Maritime Organization adopted the Strategy on Reduction of Greenhouse Gas Emissions from Ships, a monumental step towards marine decarbonization as it aims to reduce CO2 emissions across international ships or shipping by 40% by 2030. We have a legally binding international treaty against plastic pollution on the cards, with the third INC happening in Nairobi, as Ambassador Peter mentioned, as we speak. In June this year, the UN adopted a historic agreement aiming to the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, which cover over 2/3 of the ocean. This provides an essential framework for cross-sectoral cooperation between and among states and other stakeholders. We need now 60 countries to ratify international legislation to bring this into force. Can this continent be the Southern Cross by UN Ocean Conference 2025, championing the signatories? With these vital blueprints coming into place, we know what needs to be done. One, springboarding off this summit's outcome, we need a common and stronger united African voice at COP28, UNEA 6, the INC process, the UN Ocean Conference, among other global forums, capturing a defined pathway for a sustainable blue economy transition on the continent, whilst recognizing Africa's varied regional and national contexts. Ecosystem-based approaches are key. UNEP is supporting coastal counties in Kenya through the EU-funded Go Blue project. I thank you, EU, but I must push the donor community that we need more finance to be able to replicate these approaches in all sub-regions in this continent. But in Lamo, we have already seen the power of enhanced fisheries co-management and strengthened value chains for shared prosperity, inclusive economic growth, and job creation. Two, we need to strengthen evidence-based decision-making and policy formulation through better access to data and scientific assessments on the impact of climate change and other drivers of ocean ecosystem and resource degradation. Technical capacity development will be crucial to support African countries in incorporating blue carbon mitigation opportunities and information needs across NDC's national action plans, in which UNEP stands ready to support. I plead for the ones in a position to share technologies to do so. Lastly, we need all hands on deck. Environment, tourism, finance, industry, civil society, all are vital to promote the sustainable development of Africa's blue ecosystems. There is much work to be done, but the potential is huge, and Africa is blessed with a young, enabled generation of change makers. Together we can drive an enduring and Pan-African vision focusing on realizing an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful blue Africa, driven by its own citizens, and representing a dynamic and global force for good. I'm so excited to be part of this community, and I thank you very much for listening to me.
Bravo, merci beaucoup, Leticia.
Bravo, thank you very much, Leticia, General Director of Maritime and Fishing Affairs from US, and Pascal Lamy.
With Europe Africa, with the foundation and the two co-chairs of the foundation. So it's really a gift for us to have you at this opening. And Leticia, you have taken us right into the spirit of what we're going to do tomorrow. Par le menu, l'engagement par le menu.
Through the menu, the commitment with Africa, and the commitment of Africa on this aspect.
BBNJ, the High Seas Treaty, and plastic. And we know how much the EU et la Commission européenne is engaged.
And the EU Commission is engaged with the world and with Africa.
Charlène, la parole est à vous.
You have the floor, Charlène.
Thank you very much for the floor, and first I would like to express my real gratitude and feeling of honor to be invited to this first edition of Blue Africa Forum. Excellencies, distinguished guests, it's a real pleasure to be here with you today. And I'm grateful also for the warm hospitality that you feel immediately by entering Tanger and this venue. And I have to say that the warmth from Morocco and its people is really heartening and humbling, especially at a time when you're still struggling with the consequences from a very devastating earthquake. So you're an example of resilience that we have to really appreciate. Since Europe is so close to Africa, I have to say that we are sharing not just common geography through the sea, but through the sea we are sharing history and we are sharing a lot of common interest. And this is the very strong fundament of our very close partnership between the two continents, Europe and Africa. My message is very clear and probably quite straightforward in this opening. Europe and Africa relationship and partnership in ocean-related matters is well established, but at the same time there is so much more and ample room to continue and enhance this very important cooperation between the two continents. So the agenda of the European Union is green, as you know. 5 years ago we have adopted the green agenda, but the ocean as part of it is very high on our political agenda. And it is not simply the budget, because Leticia was talking about donorship and how much we can help through investment and financing, but we are very present in all the fora. We are trying to lead by example, and we are actually striving into an ambitious agenda globally for the healthy oceans that we need so much, and even more our children and grandchildren. But talking about donorship, I would like to highlight one figure. In the period between 2014 and 2020, we have invested 1 billion euros in third countries related to ocean governance. And the areas in which we invest and where we help our partnering third countries are numerous, starting from management of fisheries, because indeed we need sustainable fisheries, not to abolish it, but to make it sustainable, but also blue economy, covering the whole value chain, because this is the right approach in our opinion, starting from various types of infrastructure, for example, port infrastructure, but also management of waste, fight against marine pollution, fight against illegal, unreported and unregulated fisheries, and maritime security, to mention just a few areas in which we invested this 1 billion. And I have to reassure you, Europe is not going to step back from these commitments and from the position of trying to be a global leader among many other leaders in making our ocean healthy and sustainably used. And our key to success from our point of view is that we need, as many speakers that said before me, we need to concentrate on an integrated and holistic approach to the oceans. One of the axes that many of you also mentioned, ocean climate, but also climate biodiversity, and also food security and nutrition. When we take all these together in an axis, this is what will ensure the holistic approach to our ocean. And of course, alongside the thematics and the substance, we will continue to focus on core development values, like objectives to alleviate poverty, to ensure human rights and women empowerment. And if I have to say something very specific for Africa, I will mention our regional programs that are now in the making, that are of a value of 180 million, and they are dedicated to the ocean surrounding Africa. And I would like, allow me to mention two very important aspects on which we would like to concentrate. The first one is security, maritime security. We are not able, and we will not be able, to untap the huge potential of the ocean and blue economy if the marine environment for business is not secure. And let me mention a couple of figures. 80% of our trade goes via the ocean. 99% of data is transmitted via cables under the ocean. Oil and gas that is being extracted, 2/3 of it happens in the ocean. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, but this is the reality. And since we are talking about renewable energy at sea, offshore energy production in Europe is planned to increase by a multiplier of 20 to 50 in the next decades. So this is a huge potential which cannot be untapped without maritime security. We have to invest in that. My second aspect, it's not second in importance, is sustainability. And I agree truly with Leticia that anything that we build in the area of blue economy should not repeat the mistakes from the past. Sustainability, sustainability, sustainability along the life cycle of each and every sector in an integrated manner into a maritime blue economy. And not only, we have to make it sustainable from the point of view of creating jobs, of creating real businesses, of creating a different culture of making business. Cooperation is key for all that, and we will continue our cooperation with Africa. And my last point, and I take really the inspiration of everybody that talked about global effort, whether we talk about BBNJ treaty, whether we talk about the plastic treaty that is now in the making, whether we talk about WTO, whether we talk about any future ambitious agenda. Being strong in cooperating Europe and Africa brings an additional strength into the multilateral effort. So, ocean offers so much and huge opportunity for cooperation between Europe and Africa, but it also offers a great opportunity to defend the interests of everyone that lives on this planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madame la Directrice Générale. So we are concluding this session with a man who's come from Geneva, but actually who's coming from Mexico, Alfredo Giron, who's the head of ocean at WEF, the WEF, and also head of the Friends of Ocean Action, which is chaired or co-chaired by Peter Thomson. Just to introduce your speech and your sharings is, and that's the objectives, Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Ministre.
This is the objective, Mr. Chair and Mr. Ministers and dear Reem. The objective
is engaging with innovation and transformative action, and secondly, engaging with the private sector. That's what you do, public and private, and also with science. And I think in these three domains, we're totally aligned with what the WEF and Friends of Ocean Action, maybe you could share also what is the Friends of Ocean Action, is doing. Alfredo, la parole est à toi.
Thank you so much, Ashok, and dear Excellencies, colleagues and friends. It is really an honor to be here with you today in this first edition of the Blue Africa Summit. When I first heard about this summit, I immediately thought, okay, what are the opportunities of what the World Economic Forum could bring and present so that we start forging some of those partnerships that already exist, but that could be strengthened even further. So I will first of all like to thank the organizers. I agree with you that immediately as I landed in Tangier, I have felt the hospitality, and I really want to thank you for that. Thank you so much. It is my first time in Morocco, let me put it like that. And I am already thinking of the second and the third times. So that is where I stand right now. I am looking forward to the conversations over the next 2 days. I have seen the program in detail, and I am very excited about what awaits for us in some of those discussions, so that eventually we all, everyone in this room, can really think about how to support the development of a sustainable blue economy in Africa that contributes not only to ocean targets, but to all sustainable development targets. At the World Economic Forum, we have the Ocean Action Agenda and the Friends of Ocean Action, and here Ambassador Peter Thomson co-chairs that community, and we have a few other members like Leticia in the audience and the panel. It is a community of champions that rally together to really get their heads together to think about how do we achieve Sustainable Development Goal 14 of life underwater, and how do we use the instruments that we have, like the treaties, like the conferences, to really achieve change. So throughout these two agendas, we recognize the importance of collaboration. And as such, we try to bring together partners from business, as Ashok was mentioning, governments, intergovernmental organizations, development agencies, and civil society to tackle some of the most pressing challenges that the ocean faces. Africa holds immense potential to support a healthy and thriving ocean. And according to the African Union, the blue economy, and to the video that we saw, currently generates approximately $300 billion for the continent, creating 49 million jobs in the process. Some of the most prominent opportunities that exist in the continent are related to how the ocean is contributing to food security, decent livelihoods, and leveraging and motivating innovation. And that's exactly why in Africa, the work of the World Economic Forum focuses on elevating the role of blue foods to achieve these outcomes. And really, really focusing on what is the role of unlocking public-private partnerships, and how do we challenge the private sector to become stewards to make change. So it is not just enough to have the private sector at the conversation. It's how do we challenge them to be stewards for it. So as rapid population and income growth in Africa are fueling rising demands for fish, we have identified that there's a really urgent need to invest in sustainable aquaculture in the African continent. So for example, we have supported over 40 stakeholders to come together under the Blue Partnership Ghana initiative, which is co-led in partnership between us and the Chamber of Aquaculture in Ghana, to create and lead the implementation of an industry-focused aquaculture national action plan that can hopefully also unlock relevant partnerships to unlock the financial resources for local stakeholders along the aquaculture value chain. The initiative is endorsed by the country's Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture, with the Fisheries Commission as a direct member of the platform. They are active participants. Apart from that, we're also in constant conversations with the African Union Development Agency to think, how do we scale this model that Ghana has embarked on to really put aquaculture at the center of their development plans to other countries in the region? And we are really excited to share that there's a lot of interest on this, and I extend an open invitation for anyone who would like to talk about this as well. I think that it is important to recognize that there's one step in how do we produce more food, but there's another step in how do we best utilize it. And so for this, I think that there's a really urgent need to address seafood loss and waste, and finding improved ways to use all parts of the fish that are caught or produced, and to really think about how this can contribute not only to food security, which is the obvious one, but also to the creation of new business models, new business opportunities, new nutritional opportunities. So for example, just a few weeks ago, we supported the launch of the first seafood ocean cluster in Africa, the Namibian Ocean Cluster. Over 8 companies committed to finding ways to reducing their seafood loss and waste through, 1, aggregating byproducts such as heads and viscera, and 2, working together on testing and looking for opportunities to commercialize. This is a first of its kind for this kind of industry, mostly because it is difficult to think of this kind of collaboration. It is difficult to think about how do you go from a product that you think as a byproduct right now into creating business opportunities for companies that already have established business model. And we are really excited to scale this model now to other parts in the African continent. And what we are doing is that we are partnering with several investors that are interested in creating these new business models to enable innovation to flourish. And again, extend an open invitation to talk more about this if of interest. So I think that these two examples demonstrate the power of collaboration to unlock economic opportunities to address common challenges. And we look forward to looking for more of that. Finally, I want to share that we have focused on the role of finance and innovation to deliver local solutions to local challenges. And a few of the people in the room will recognize what I will talk about next. Most recently, we ran an Uplink Innovation Challenge. Uplink is the World Economics Forum platform to surface innovators. This was run in partnership with our partners at IUCN and the Ocean Hub Africa. And we were able to highlight 7 local innovators working on incredible ideas around restoration, conservation, monitoring, data sharing, and how they come together to create and protect a great blue wall in Eastern Africa. Just to mention an example, Kumbasha Seafood, a Kenyan startup, is working to lift remote coastal communities out of poverty, fishing communities, by training them to provide world-class, premium-grade seafood in a sustainable way and connecting them to global markets. So as you can see, this is addressing a very local problem with a very local solution. And we are going to continue doing this and supporting the attraction of investments into those types of solutions. So in this case, they are empowering fisheries with new skills and in general, communities with new infrastructure, thereby preventing the need for destructive and risky practices in the future. So let me just finalize by saying that we look forward to continuing to work with you all to develop these type of partnerships that are needed to accelerate a sustainable blue economy in Africa. But more than everything, we look forward to working with you all to really challenge those other stakeholders like the private sector on how and what is their role to help us achieve this together. Thank you very much.
Formidable. Thank you very much. Peter, if you accept to say a few words of conclusion before we thank our distinguished guests. We're so proud and happy to have the UN, UNEP, EU, the WEF, and the gouverneur d'Abidjan together. I think it really makes sense. The energies are here and the energies are in the room. We're very excited to and looking forward for tomorrow's interaction. Perhaps, Peter, if you want to say a few words, and I would request President Pascal Lamy, si vous voulez bien nous rejoindre aussi.
If you want to join us, please, Pascal Lamy, just for a word, conclusion word before moving to the group photo.
Thank you very much, Ashok, and thanks to the speakers. That was so interesting. Interaction was your last word that you mentioned there, Ashok, and that's what I'm really looking forward to. There are so many interesting voices seated in this U-shape here. We've got so much to talk about, so little time. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time. Just as I was listening to the conversations there, and I was thinking about, how is this relevant to Africa? What can come out of this summit that Africa can really take home? I was thinking of two things that are very relevant in Africa at the moment. One is fisheries subsidies, and the other is the plastic treaty that has been mentioned. Why fisheries subsidies? I can tell you that it was African fishermen who really got us going on addressing this problem of $20 to $30 billion per annum of public monies being spent on industrial fishing fleets to go out and deplete the ocean of its fish. And of course, who was suffering? The people who were suffering were the traditional fishermen who no longer had fish in their nets because these industrial fleets were basically depleting the ocean. And I learned that lesson in Senegal on the beaches there, and I heard it from the representatives of the Small Fishermen's Association from Ghana and other countries in the Gulf of Guinea. And that's really what got us going in Geneva to say, look, enough of this madness. And so, in a sense, there's an African legacy here that I would really like to infuse into this conference. Why? Because We need the African voice in Geneva at this time. Basically, what's been done at WTO is a two-phase exercise. The first phase has been agreement by everybody that we will ban fisheries subsidies that go towards illegal fisheries. We agreed to that over a year ago. I mean, it sounds ridiculous that we give subsidies to almost, subsidize criminal behavior to go and steal fish from each other and steal from nature. But anyway, that has been agreed to, but it has to be ratified. And there are not enough ratifications yet. I think we have to get up over 100, is it, Pascal, to bring into agreement, into force. So that is one thing, that Africa can go to Geneva and make that happen through their ratifications. And I'm happy to say that a lot of African countries have already ratified. The second part of that phase, though, is that we are under negotiation now, the WTO members, to agree to ban subsidies which lead to overcapacity. So that's where I said, we're giving these subsidies to industrial fleets to go out and basically overfish the ocean. We know that we're overfishing by 34%. So we have overcapacity. So that's what's being negotiated at the moment. There is slow but steady progress, is the way it's been described to me amongst the members. But there's still hope that by February, when the WTO Ministerial Council meeting is held, that we can get that agreement. And that would be a major, major step forward for the ocean. And again, African voices in Geneva, when Africa speaks as one, that's 54 countries, we can get this done by February. So that would be one great take-home. The other one I want to refer to briefly, because it's happening in Nairobi on the continent now, is INC3, the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, the third meeting thereof, INC3, is happening in Nairobi right now. And this is to create this plastic pollution treaty. Three things about this, and I'm not speaking from the UN here, I'm speaking as Peter Thomson. Three things. Firstly, this is supposed to be about marine pollution. It's not just about accommodating the plastic industry and trying to get it to do the right thing. It's about marine pollution. From the depths of the Mariana Trench to the Antarctica to everywhere on our beaches, there is plastic pollution. You might say the beach out here is clean, but that's only because of tidal flows. You go to the most isolated island in the world, near Pitcairn Island, and it's heavily polluted, even though there's no humanity around. Why? The plastic's being carried on currents. And what's happening to the plastic? It's breaking down into microplastics, and it's coming back to us in the organisms we eat from the ocean. So this is a big problem, the marine pollution by plastic. So here, the treaty has to address the best thing we can do in that regard, which is source to sea ethos, stopping what is happening by what is flowing off the land in form of plastics and microplastics, down rivers, urban detritus, stopping that. And so that is adequately funding of regional authorities and local authorities, cities and so on. We must make sure that that's part of this treaty. Two other things I'm passionate about for this treaty. One is, I referred to the fact that we're eating plastic, right? But it's not just what's coming from the ocean, it's the fact that all our food is wrapped in plastic and all the rest. Every doctor that I know that has done any research on this says that plastic is bad for the human health. It's crossed our blood-brain barrier, it's crossed our placental barrier in women, and the emerging consensus. Think back to the tobacco days when there was an emerging consensus, but not yet a decision that tobacco was bad for human health. Back in those days when I was a young boy smoking, we was told it may be, right? Now we know it's lung cancer, it's heart disease and all that. We're in a similar situation with plastic. You talk to a doctor who knows anything about this, and he will say hormonal disruption, obesity, dementia, all these things that are on the up, plastic, all right? So if the doctor thinks that now, he needs the money for the research to prove that point. So there is text in this plastic treaty, which is under negotiation now, to address the effects on human health. So there's early recognition that this is happening, but that needs to be strengthened. And it has to be an outcome of the treaty. And the last point I want to make is that there is also text in there about alternatives to plastic. And that's why I say, I don't think this treaty should just be an accommodation of the plastic industry. Well, let's call it what it really is, the oil and gas industry, because this is their future. This is what they want to use the oil and gas for in the future, the production of plastic as they move away from transport industries. So it should not just be an accommodation of that. It should be about humanity and our place in nature. That should be the outcome of this treaty. So, you know, these are obviously points that I'm passionate about as a grandfather. I keep plastic away from my 3-year-old granddaughter who lives with me. And I think that we have a great opportunity to change civilization. Because in my lifetime, we moved from no plastic to this inundation of the planet by plastic, in my lifetime. So we have a chance now with this treaty to change that and go back to a nature-friendly relationship on the planet. Sorry, Ashok, I went on a little bit, but get passionate on that.
Thank you very much, President Pascal Lamy. Please, the floor is yours for a few words of conclusion, and then we'll invite the ministers to join us for a photography, and then everyone on stage, as RIM has requested. President Pascal Lamy.
Merci, Ashok, de mots de...
Thank you very much. A few comments before we move to a more festive stage of the evening. I just wanted to quickly comment on what has been said by Mr. Thomson concerning subsidies for fishing. This is a topic close to my heart. I had initiated this conversation within the WTO to regulate those subsidies to fisheries that we know contribute to overfishing and the exhaustion of fishing stocks, which are crucial to many people around the planet, and not just those living on the coast. To my mind, it's a very good example of this sequence which highlights what we need to do. This gap between what we know, the awareness, and the moment of action. We knew 20 years ago that these subsidies led to overfishing. We had the data. And the data was enough to convince a few of us. And it took 20 years to go from initial awareness, this knowledge, this information, to the awareness, thanks mostly to the NGO action, which mobilized across many countries, including in the US, maybe more than in Europe at the time. We are Mr. Charlie Neshavar. The EU policy at the time leaned more towards the fishermen than the fish. This has changed, thank goodness. We found a better balance. Just to say, we needed 20 years to move from initial knowledge to societal awareness to a political agreement that now needs ratification. And I think we also have a similar process on the New York Treaty for the High Seas. But we have, at least between Europe and Africa, we have the key to ratification. If all European and African countries ratify this agreement, it comes into force. And we are now in this moment of action. And many NGOs are also pushing Europe and Africa in this direction. It took us 20 years to cover this sequence on subsidies for fishing. I'd like to conclude by saying we cannot wait 20 years to reverse the degradation of the ocean environment. We barely have that time to avoid irreversible degradation in a very modest topic of subsidies given the global stakes of the environments today. It took us 20 years for fishing subsidies, but to reverse the degradation of the ocean, we can't wait 20 years, which means that we have to accelerate our initiatives, which we will start tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock as part of this Africa Foundation to build the coalition we need to accelerate this sequence, knowledge, awareness, policy, action. And in this respect, the Blue Africa Summit is clearly focused on action. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, President Mr. Lamy. I would like to invite all our honorable guests and our honorable speakers who spoke today to join us, including Mr. His Excellency Nizar Baraka, Minister of Equipment and Water, Mrs. Reem Bezinan, Chairwoman of La Saison Bleue, the Honorable Abdeljalil Lahjomri, Permanent Secretary of the Académie of the Kingdom of Morocco. Feel free to sing along to this song by Charles Trenet, dating back to the 1930s and a staple of French culture, which speaks of the sea and how it glitters just beyond the roads.
Et d'une chanson d'amour, la mer a bercé mon cœur pour la vie, la mer qu'on va danser le long des golfes clairs à des reflets d'argent, la mer des reflets changeants sous la pluie, la mer au ciel d'été.
Alors je vous invite tous ceux qui parlent demain, à nous rejoindre pour faire la photo.
Could we have all the speakers, all those
on stage for the picture? On va faire plusieurs enjeux.
If you're speaking tomorrow, please join the family picture on the podium. All of tomorrow's speakers, please join us on the podium. We have also amongst us the director of the French Agency for Development, AFD.
Ces oies de blanc et ces maisons la mer, elle est abercée le long des golfes clairs et d'une chanson d'amour là-bas. On berce mon cœur pour la vie.
Oui, je pense. Je pense. Il faut faire attention, mais je pense. Je pense qu'il faut descendre d'une marche. Voilà.
Okay. Voilà, exactement.
Encore. Non.
Là. Je vais faire petit. C'est bon, parce qu'on voit le président. Voilà, c'est mieux.